Do you have trouble creating creatures without using reference at all? Today I'm going to introduce some techniques that I would do if you're in this situation where you want to create a creature like this from head to toe without any reference. Now I want to give a disclaimer, and that is, with my line of work and with anybody's line of work, when we have to design characters and creatures for games and film, we have to use reference, because if we were going to invent something from our head, we need to pull from imagery that we have already seen, and that is collecting reference for months, years, or days, months, years, whatever it takes to get the project done. Let's say that you want to come up with something so unique, so out of left field that you're not looking at any photos at all, and you just want to be able to use your imagination and have fun with it. So I'll teach you how to do that. And there's actually some easy ways in order to accomplish that. You know, if you want to do something mammalian, okay, like this, or alien, dinosaur-ish, you know, we could do that. Or we can get stuff that's a little weirder, you know, maybe some plant-like creatures, stuff that looks like rocks and lava. Or if we want to go completely insane and do something that is very scribbly, like this, okay, something really weird. Like you have no idea what's going on half the time when you're drawing these things. Like this thing up here. It looks like a spaceship, but it looks like an exoskeleton mixed with coral. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is, and I drew these 3 years ago. So it is what it is. But to add to the challenge today and add to the fun, I'm going to be drawing with a ballpoint pen, you see right here. So if you're interested in the exact type of ballpoint pen, it is the Ultra Round Stick Grip. Okay, it's just a standard black ballpoint that you can pick up at your local CVS, Walmart, Target, doesn't matter. Okay, you can order these for pretty cheap. You know, I have some links right on my video, so make sure that you know, you check that out so you don't have to go searching in person for them. We're going to be drawing right over here. I got this nice little spot opened up that we can do this in, and I'm going to show you some techniques. So get your sketchbooks ready, get your pens ready. If you want to do this in pencil, that's fine. The reason I encourage for this particular lesson to do it in pen is because there is no turning back. You are forced to lay down these markings and be happy with it, which is going to train your brain into concepting instead of overcorrecting. Okay, there's no erasers involved. We're not going to spend hours and hours shading, none of that. All right, so without further ado, let's get into some lessons. Now, if you've seen my previous lessons, you'll know that I encourage scribbling. Okay, so I just made a little mark here that you can see. It looks like a little hairball. There's nothing to it. It could literally be interpreted as anything. It could be a dead flower. It could be tumbleweed, a hairball, you name it. And I encourage this because it's going to free everybody's mind. Each one of us has a different set of markings that we like to put on the paper when we draw because it's comfortable. Okay, whether it's bubbly shapes, whether it's spiky, weird, veiny shapes, scales, rocky, dirt textures, whatever. So when it comes to scribbling, this kind of throws everybody's thought process and drawing something comfortable out the window. And what this does is it opens up your mind to new shapes, things that we probably normally wouldn't draw, including myself. So I will be the first to admit, whenever I draw stuff, I kind of go the insect route, just because when I grew up, I loved bugs, I obsessed about them. Yes, I was a nerd about that, along with dinosaurs, so I mixed the two together, hence why I draw creepy, hairy, alien bug stuff. But I get most of my work because of the creepy, hairy, alien bug stuff. So whatever your specialty is, you know, embrace that. But what I'm doing here is I'm just throwing some different markings together, all right? You don't have to worry about an eraser. You don't have to worry about correcting anything you're putting down. That's the other thing. When you're drawing in a sketchbook, remember that your sketchbook is your own journey. It's your own exploration diary, I guess you can call it. I think one of the things that I struggled with growing up was that everything that I put down on paper, I ended up trying to draw it for somebody else to approve of it versus me achieving a certain level of artistic or artistry. Okay, so instead of me wanting to get better, I was just drawing to try to be cool. And the thing is, when I say that your sketchbooks are a diary, it literally is that. Nobody has to approve of anything that you put in your sketchbook. Okay, because if you have a 100-page sketchbook and you start on page 1, what you're going to end up with on page 100 is probably going to be better than page 1. And if that's the case, then you have achieved more than most people ever will when they draw a sketchbook. Okay, and this is why I encourage all my students to date all of their work. You know, it's fun to see progress. We all want to see progress. We go to the gym, we don't see a six-pack right away. 3 weeks later, we start seeing our abs. It's like that, okay? But the initial stages of like starting out, it's pretty tough. Okay, so like, yes, I've been drawing for years. I've been studying animals and everything. But what am I going to do if I'm throwing all that away and I'm just trying to invent something that I've never drawn before? All right, let's get into it. So I have a bunch of weird shapes here. I don't even know if I'm happy with those. Okay, but that's not the point. It's okay to not be happy about your drawings. This isn't going to set my mood for the rest of the day. What it is going to do is give me some idea on what I can put in this empty space right here. All right, so let's give a hypothetical scenario. Let's say that some of you are sitting in a cafe right now. Your phone is in your pocket. There's no animals in sight, no insects, and you have absolutely no idea where to start drawing a creature. So you start obsessing about movies you've seen, or your pet, or something that is around you. Be like, I don't know where to start. I have no idea. Just start throwing lines down, okay? You got a pen. All right, let's do it lightly. I'm just going to start throwing large shapes first. Why large? Not small, large. Large because we are going to take care of the body, the main silhouette. You start large when you're inventing from the fly, and then you move in to like the tertiary details, instead of starting with the tertiary details and then trying to go wide, because whatever you put down first is going to dictate where everything is. If you get the whole silhouette of the creature's body in first, it's easier to work your way in because you know where not to expand anymore. Versus if you start off small, you don't know where to stop. So you just keep going on a drawing and then you end up hating it. So this way it gives you some boundary. All right, this is why in game design, when we do concept art, characters and creatures, and armor, whatever you're drawing, it's good to have the strong silhouette first, because then you can move in to the minute details. Okay, so once we have this, I'm immediately starting to see, it's almost like a sea urchin. And I wasn't thinking of a sea urchin, I'm just now realizing that. And then I'm seeing some crisscrossing patterns here. It looks kind of like ribbing. So that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. All right, let's see where this goes. I'm going to push just a little harder so you can see some of these lines on camera. That's cool. And then I have this like bubbly shape here. It's an oval. I encourage you to check out my previous lesson. Earlier this month, I believe it was the end of March, maybe the beginning of April, where I was teaching you how to draw a creature using basic spheres. It's kind of like the same thing. It takes care of the large shape, and I encourage you to do that too. It's not just about scribbling shapes down that are jagged. You know, do some roundness, okay, do some ellipses. Make sure you're drawing with your shoulder and not your wrist or your elbow. Okay. Now that we got that in there, looks kind of cool. I'm going to start throwing some other shapes together because I'm starting to see these sharp areas down here at the bottom. Okay, so again, I have no animal in mind. I did mention the sea urchin before, but it's clearly not a sea urchin. All right, I like that. These spiky bits down at the bottom are actually pretty intriguing, and that's not it doesn't mean that this is a deadly creature, because there are plenty of animals on Earth where they look deadly, but they're actually pretty friendly, and plants too. I mean, that's the other thing about creature design is plants and creatures kind of go hand in hand, especially if it's on some strange alien planet. Like there's some weird plants out there. You got dragon fruit. You got stuff from all kinds of countries. It just looks weird. Okay. Now, all the stuff in the middle that I drew, I was just kind of rounding some areas off. I don't know what those can be, but I'm starting large, remember. Any kind of new area that I'm drawing in, I will start large and work my way small. So I'm getting a comfortable movement in here with my shoulder and how these ovals are just appearing. So what it looks like now is almost a mixture of something from the sea and an acorn and a jellyfish, actually. So something aquatic. That's kind of cool. Maybe I'll add tentacles later. I don't know. That's one of the cool things about drawing tentacles. You don't need reference for that. You don't. You just draw slithering snake-like shapes and you have a tentacle. Now, if you want to do something like an octopus where it has suckers, or something like a jellyfish where it's just stringy, but you need to know how long each section is, yeah, looking at reference will definitely help. But again, if you've made it this far, congratulations, you still haven't looked at any pictures of any creatures or whatsoever. All right, and now if you're wondering what I'm doing right this second, I'm just kind of floating my pen over certain areas just to see what sticks, like what looks good with what shape. Okay, so the other thing I just noticed I did, and I did not mean to do it, was that there seems to be a hump right here. And I like that. And it's also not completely symmetrical. So it looks like the back end of this creature is more bulbous. It's fatter than the front part. So these round shapes, I guess you can call them air sacs, they're a little smaller in the front. I kind of like that. So I think I'm going to go with it. Maybe this is the back, and maybe it's because I drew this tilted, so maybe it's moving in this direction. Okay, so that's good. Another thing that I forgot to mention is whenever you have a sheet of sketches, even if it's thumbnails, even if they are thumbnails, and even if it's in like the dirty, cruddy stage of design, it's always good to add some energy to your sketch pages. Because believe it or not, when you have a portfolio and you're trying to show it to a company, they tend to look at your thumbnails way more than your final polished pieces. And if your thumbnails don't have any energy to them, you don't have anything to bring over from your sketch stage over to the final stage. Have you ever noticed that like you'll have a really good looking sketch, but yet when you start to do a finalized colored version of it, it gets completely stiff and you lose the energy of it? That's what happens. So this is why this stage is so important. You need to capture the movement. And if that means showing weight distribution of your creature slightly leaning to the side, slightly leaning to one leg, study how people lean on their foot when they're waiting at a bus stop. Just look at them outside of your window when you're driving. We all have that main pivot leg that we turn with, and we all have that leg that we put all of our weight on when we're just kind of chilling, because everybody looks at their phone now. You'll see it everywhere. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm tilting the pen slightly to the side. So again, we're not drawing with a pencil, okay? So we don't have the luxury of correcting what we put down. And that's part of the fun about drawing with a pen, okay? I'm going over some areas that I actually really like with a very, very light touch with the pen. And it kind of, it shades well. The markings that you put down with a ballpoint pen, you can't get this anywhere else with any other tool. None of the liquid pens. You could probably get it with a micron, but I will say that micron pens are much better for doing comic inking than they are for drawing. You could do some mechanical drawings with a micron, but if you want something totally freeing where you can get good line weight, do it with a ballpoint. Once we get these light markings down and we're starting to like the shape that we're making, we can start to look at little areas that are still open and maybe add some really cool things in here. So I want to keep the theme of these round shapes going. So what if I just make some smaller ones, and they're not all the same size, and they're just kind of filling the gaps of these open spaces. All right, so that looks kind of cool. It's almost like the top of this creature is going to have some kind of a weird exoskeleton, but it's not an insect. It doesn't swim. We don't know if it floats. We don't know what this is. And that's great. That's the mission for today's lesson. All right, so I'm just going to fill in some different areas. Whenever you sketch with a pen, take advantage of how dark you can actually get these things right on the fly. Okay, this is one of the many advantages of drawing with a ballpoint, is that you can go from dark to light instantly and you don't have to sharpen anything. It's awesome. All right, so I'm keeping things relatively light as I move up this strange shape. It probably could be the head, but I'm not sure yet. The reason I'm keeping it light is because the shapes they're large up here, and I don't know if I want to maybe put some more details on there later. It's kind of like I'm just laying the foundation for what could exist at a later time. But I'm going to make some of these round shapes bleed down into the body here and keep those different sizes. And then all of a sudden, maybe down here at the belly, I'll just make it bigger as it wraps down underneath. I'm saying belly because I'm starting to get a picture of what this can actually look like. I guess down here by the legs, I guess you can kind of, I don't know if those are legs, but maybe this opens and closes, and maybe it's like, maybe it puffs out air and it shoots forward. Who knows? This is pretty cool. I'm pretty hard on myself whenever I invent creatures on the fly if I'm not looking at reference, and I have to say I'm actually pretty happy with this. Usually I'm just very, very hard on myself. Man, back in the day when I was trying to get in the industry, I would start drawing stuff, and if I wasn't happy in the first 10 seconds, I would just close the sketchbook, open it back up maybe a day later, and then try to draw something else. Wasn't happy about that, and then I just wasted 2 sheets of paper in my sketchbook with no progress. I had to stop that crap. Like it wasn't good. But we all have to go through it. Part of it's just maturity too. So I had to mature as a designer. Your mind will calm. It really will. But at the same time, one way to calm your mind is to just draw. Just don't care about what happens. There we go. Now we're starting to see a pretty gnarly looking thing. Those of you that are watching right now, maybe you're drawing along with me, or you're just seeing what is about to happen, I would love to hear in the comments what you would actually call this thing. I don't know. That's the fun part, right? So I'm pretty happy with where these large scale shapes are. So what I'm going to do now is do a little trick I like to do with adding depth without shading. And that is any kind of surface or hole where there's no light coming in, I'll just make it dark. Usually when scale shapes, dirt, rocks, they all meet each other in a corner, I like to put little dark spots in there that kind of follow the shape. So it looks like there's a deep inset crevice. It gives depth without having to worry too much about shading to show the depth. All right. Again, we're using a ballpoint, so there's not really going to be any shading to this. But instead, I'm keeping my hand grip very, very light on this pen. Okay, you notice, like, I don't have to worry about smearing this pen nearly as much as I do smearing pencil. Okay, so I can rub my palm across here, but again, in the 90% of my lessons, I draw with a pencil, and I always tell people keep this part off of the page. This is the killer when it comes to smearing your graphite. It always happens because we're always rubbing this across there. So keep your pinky up, left hand, right hand, doesn't matter, and this way it'll help train you how to keep things light and moving. Okay. So now what I'm doing is these large bulbous shapes that are poking up here, I think what I'll do is show them on the other side very lightly. So it's going to wrap around this side. Remember, in the front of this creature, they're not going to be as big. So maybe just a hint. But what I have to do now to show depth is that this headpiece, I'm going to call it the headpiece because I don't know what else to call it. I'm going to put a nice outline here. So I'm just going to kind of feather in very light line, or no, I'm sorry, light to dark lines. All right, give a nice little ink outline here. You'll see in my previous lessons that I'll go light to dark really quickly, or dark to light, or light dark to light. Okay, so anytime I get a new shape in here, I'll usually go dark to light, fade the line off, and then I'll start dark again when the shape changes. Okay, but I'm keeping things very loose. I'm staying committed to my movements. That's the other thing that's gonna help you guys and girls draw, is that stay committed to your pencil stroke or your pen stroke. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll get obsessed about a certain area and we'll do what's called hair marks. We'll just kind of draw, overcorrect, draw, overcorrect, draw, overcorrect, and there's no smoothness to your line work. And if you want to truly open your mind up and draw something without thinking too hard, you got to just commit to the whole thing. And this is where the fear of letting go really comes in. But I encourage you guys to, again, treat your sketches as if you're not going to be showing anybody else for approval. I'm not doing this for validation anymore. Okay? When I was younger, I drew because I loved it. That was like 99% of it. But I also wanted to be validated. Like I wanted to know if I was good. And it's hard when nobody tells you you're good. So you question, like, should I keep doing this? I don't know if it's working. I don't get a lot of likes. Like, I don't understand. And let me just tell you, stay with your journey. Okay, those of you that are drawing along with me right now, and you don't think you're good, and nobody says you're good, and like you feel like you're not getting the proper training. I understand that. I understand the frustration. You just have to put in the mileage, because at the end of the day, I could be telling you one thing here on YouTube. You could be looking at 5, 6 other channels on how to draw. You can have a teacher and like your physical presence at a school teaching you how to draw. Everybody's viewpoint is different. You're not going to get good unless you just sit down and draw. Okay, you have to learn these movements yourself, because no teacher is going to know how your brain operates or your mechanical movements with your arm. All right, you just have to draw. And I think a lot of times when students want to learn how to be really, really good at art quickly, they think there's some surefire blueprint way to do it. Like, I want to know what to do in step A. I want to know what to do in blah, blah, blah. I'm not cutting that out. I want to know what to do in step B and C, and it just doesn't work like that. You're not going to get surefire answers that are going to give you top-notch results every single time. You just have to draw, and you have to suck most of the time. I know it's harsh to hear, but you do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now and this is different with a pen, is that these open areas I'm going to keep super light, but the pen offers a nice outline. So I'm going to keep my pen going at the same shape as that bulb. Like, it looks like an egg now. Okay, I'm going to do that. Oh, this is so weird looking. Okay, and then I'm going to keep these asymmetrical. So they're not going to be perfectly going across here. I don't know what the heck is happening, guys. I don't know what's going on here, but I kind of like it. Those of you that think you kind of know what I'm drawing, I would love to hear an idea. Maybe this is something from, I don't know, another galaxy. Maybe it's bacteria that we don't know about yet. Maybe it's from Mars, who knows? All right, there we go. We're on the cusp of finding alien life too. We're very, very, very close. And I think once we find alien life, it's going to change the fundamentals of humanity forever into what we think is going on out there. Because I think a lot of people are scared to admit that it could exist, so they just make excuses for when we discover new things. That happens all the time. It's like, you want to call it closed-mindedness, but it's like there's going to be a time when you're going to look at stuff and you go, yeah, I can't deny that now. There's actually people out there that believe dinosaurs are fake. It's like, yeah, okay. I'm not even going to get into that argument. But anyway, Now this is really starting to come together, and actually it's kind of cool. I like it. Still not ready to shade yet, but I'm looking at these shapes. I'm going to turn this a little bit just so I can look at it, because I'm drawing with the sketchbook tilted, and I guess you guys can see it. Yeah, okay. Kind of looks like a fruit too, right? Some of the best tasting fruits in the world are scary looking. Like I mentioned before, dragon fruit, it looks like something Green Goblin would throw at you and it explodes. Like, it's so weird looking. Kind of like a bitter taste too. Okay. Oh, another thing that I'm going to do is with a pen or a pencil, whenever you have the light source shining down on the object and you don't want to shade the shadow, just be sure to darken the underbelly part so that you can indicate where the shadow could exist underneath. And I think I'm going to do that throughout this entire bottom portion of the creature. How I'm actually putting the darkness down for the shadow, I'm just trying to look at shapes where there's a definitive line. I'm going dark to light. I'm using these short movements, okay, these short bursts with the pen. It's a little different, so you got to be more strategic. Okay, remember, once it's down, it is down. This is going to give you a really good look to your pen drawings. It's going to give a nice outline. Now, the other thing to add depth without shading so much is that anything closest to us, just give a slightly darker treatment to the outline of it, and then you want to fade that off into the background. So I had mentioned in one of my previous lessons about how outlining isn't good if you want realistic drawings. No, it doesn't mean the outlining is horrible, and there's nothing wrong with cartoons or anything like that. I'm talking about just adding realistic depth to your drawings. Okay, you want to fade that off. You want to show some darkness in the front, some lighter drawings in the background, just so it looks like there's a depth of field without having to worry too much about details. All right, so move this over here. So these shapes are obviously in the front versus the other bulbous shapes in the back, so that's going to get a slightly darker treatment here. Okay, and I'm walking over some gestural lines. These extra lines that I put down as I draw, they're more of a guide for me than they are actual functional markings that I need to put down in order to show skin, wrinkles, scales, fur, spikes, etc. I don't need to do it, but it helps me. Because let's face it, when you're drawing with a pen, texturing is different than it is with a pencil. Graphite spreads much farther on paper than ink. So that means that texturing is easier with a pencil. More space gets taken up, the texturing is larger in your line of sight, therefore it looks more finished, all right? Okay, so once I do that, I'm just gonna keep those light in the back. I'm not really gonna add any darkness back there per se, except for maybe this area where two of the bulbous shapes encircling the back of this creature, there's probably no light getting into that spot down there, okay? And I just want you to be able to see it. All right, so once we got that, we got to finish these two. See how I jump around? It's okay to jump around. No, I'm not going to sing jump around. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I know you guys know what song I'm talking about, but that would be so incredibly corny if I did that on YouTube. I'm not going to do it. Now I can't get the song out of my head. Oh, man. Okay, anyway, now that we have that, I actually am going to put a little bit of shading in now in areas where I know that there's a big transition, almost like a trench happening. And that is right in between here. So how would I shade with a pencil? All right. Now, before I do this, those of you that have been following along with me and you're drawing something that you have never drawn before and you haven't looked at any reference, congratulations. You are already on your way of inventing something on the fly without looking at anything. Now, once we're finished with this drawing, we can obviously go into Google and just look at real animals and go, oh, that's wrong. That joint's wrong. That doesn't look like anything, blah, 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 and overcorrect it. Yes, we could do that. But just to be able to come up with something, it's open to interpretation, which is the fun part about thumbnailing. It's the fun part about character design and creature design. Like, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it could be for whatever. All right, I'm going to tilt my pen to the side here. If you have problems at the end of your ballpoints with blotches of ink that maybe collect at the end of it, then you should do two things. One, wipe it away. So just take your pen off to the side, turn it, and then it gets the blotch off of it, or the blob of ink. Two, buy new pens. Quit drawing with the same crappy pen that you've been doing for like 6 months. Just go get a new pen. These are not expensive at all. I think you could buy a whole 12-pack of Bic for maybe $10, $8 on Amazon. I don't know. All right, turn it slightly to the side. Now the way I'm holding a pen is a little different than a pencil because that is such a smaller surface area to work with when you shade. So you need to hold it closer to the tip. And I'm just going to lean it to the side and lightly push, and I'm going to hatch my shading. Okay. Now I'm not cross hatching because there's nothing crossing those lines. I'm single hatching. Sometimes I like walking them, so I'll do little bursts like this. Real fine lines, lightly drawn. My palm is resting on the page like this. I just turn my fingers down and I just kind of walk it as if I'm drawing hair, and I keep the strokes close together. Okay, and then guess what? I'm going to turn my page and I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm cross hatching, but you start with a single hatching. But each time I'm moving up the area, I'm going to press lighter and lighter. Now, you could treat it like a pencil and just kind of stagger them like this and not letting go of your pen off of the paper. You could do that, but you got to be careful because you will get strokes that are different with a pen than you do with a pencil. It's not going to bleed into the other stroke as easily as it does with a pencil. Graphite upon graphite, it tends to look way better when it's like mixed together tightly. With a pen, you probably need a lot more passes, okay? Because it's going to look like cross-hatching even if you do 6 or 7 passes. Like with the graphite, or with the pencil, it's going to fill the area much easier. So I'm just going to show you what you can do here. I'm tilting the pen far enough to where the ballpoint is barely touching the paper. And what that means is there's a point where you start to shade with a pen, even if you tilt it to the side, where it doesn't feel like the ball is actually touching the paper anymore, the ink part. And there's barely any ink coming out. That's actually a good thing because that's going to enable you to sketch lightly. So if you look at my drawing up here, okay, there's some areas in here on the skin where I just kind of overlapped. I just made some jagged shapes very lightly, and as I crisscrossed and I did some random patterns, it formed its own texture. But it was so light because I turned it to the side that, you know, it kind of took care of the shading for me. All right, so once I'm over here, all right, man, this thing is looking gnarly. I'm going to start to put some very light markings in those little crevices here. The great thing, well, yeah, it's great, but also the beautiful thing about drawing with a pen is that each single line that you put down is so visible. There's no iffy areas really when you draw with a pen. Like every single marking has a purpose. And that's what you want to remember when you're drawing, when you're finalizing a drawing, okay? When you're coming up with something on the fly, like nothing has a purpose yet, except for starting with the silhouette. Remember when we first started this drawing, we're just like, I don't know where it's going to go, but we got to do the body first. That's like the only real part where you shouldn't care about how it ends up. Now that I'm doing this, there actually is going to be a core shadow running on the outside here. And the way I can achieve that with a pen is just like running my pen across the edge of it. Just make sure that you acknowledge each individual shape that you're putting the shading on top of, just so it looks more realistic than just putting a straight line across rounded shapes. Then it doesn't look good, because you know, when a shadow hits an egg or hits an orange or something round, it's going to follow the roundness. Okay, that's why the core shadows on spheres are so hard to draw. There we go. I'm really excited to announce that I'm currently working on a foundation drawing series that you can actually purchase. You know, I'm going to have my Shopify open soon. The links will be right in my YouTube channel, where you can purchase individual lessons on how to draw cubes, cones, cylinders, and spheres, see in depth on how I shade those realistically to the point where they look like they're coming off the page, and also how to map the shadows to them if you're going to shine a light on them. So everything that I taught in foundation school, I'm going to pour all my knowledge into it. I'm going to create my own syllabus so you can follow along at your own pace. I also encourage you to not only subscribe to my channel if you're new to it, but join our Discord, our Creature Design Workshop Discord. The link is in the description. It's free to join. I'm also starting up my May Creature Design Workshop. Okay, it's going to run 4 weeks. I have a website for that if you want to sign up. Again, all the info is also in our Discord. It's bustling. People are entering the Discord every single day. We probably get like 2-3 dozen people joining per day, and it's just growing. It just keeps growing. It's just great. Word of mouth, more videos I post. It's awesome. And I encourage you guys to, put the link out to my Discord in places that I don't know of, places that maybe you're a member of, and you think people can benefit from learning not just how to draw creatures, but just to draw in general. Okay, that's why we're here. We're learning how to draw creatures, but we're also learning how to draw. Okay, and we have a personal work channel where people just post their doodles every day. Nobody's there to judge anybody. There's awesome feedback. Like it's a fun community. So I encourage you guys to join the Discord. All right. Now that we have darkened this area, this is like the main area of focus. The possibilities are endless with this thing. Maybe it squeezes. I'm thinking, I don't know what it's called, but it's when you need to add oxygen to a fire in a fireplace and you kind of just blow the air into it. Whatever that technical name is, somebody please mention it in the comments. Air blower? I don't know. Fire blow? I don't know. But it's pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of that. Maybe it floats like that. Maybe this thing floats in the atmosphere. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so I took a little break there, and as I was looking at my sketch, I realized that there's some really cool opportunities for these strange horizontal slashes to actually expand and contract. So maybe it breathes that way. Maybe these are air sacs, and it actually does float. It's a floating creature. I think that'd be kind of cool. So in that case, I think what I'll do is maybe darken these lines right here in the front, and only the outermost crest of the round part, and maybe they open that way, but we really can't see it open. It's like an implied function. So I'm just going to put a darker line there. And so what am I doing, and why am I drawing like this? You'll notice my hand moving the way it is. When it comes to tertiary details, this is what I consider a tertiary detail. It's smaller. I can concentrate on a smaller area. I've already done the heavy lifting. Okay, we got the big silhouette here. We got the secondary details, which are like these weird movable spike things. And then we have the tertiary details starting out. And that is the smaller scales. Actually, these larger scales on the head probably could be secondary details, because they're not super small, but they're also not the biggest. Okay, so here I have to pay attention to the roundness of these shapes. Okay, remember they're asymmetrical. So as it's wrapping around the shape, this is where realism comes in. I need to define for myself where that ends. So I'm going to end that round shape here so that I know where that wraps around. And when it comes to creature design, especially if you're doing it for a client and it'll eventually get modeled, the modeling department needs to have a clear design on what your intention is. Okay, because remember, the modeling department, they're not the concept artists. They're just modeling what you concepted. So the clearer you are with your design, the easier it is for them to model. Through my years of experience, I've made mistakes before where I kind of left places ambiguous because I thought, well, I mean, the thing is going to be modeled. They could just like finish it, and it's not fair to the modeler to do that. Now, yeah, sometimes modelers they can draw too, and they're good at concepting, but you can never just jump into a situation and assume that they'll do that, because that's not their job. Okay, I'm not really trying to go on a side tangent here. I'm trying to help you. Those of you that maybe are like starting off in the industry, or you don't really have strong concepts, the stronger the concept, the more clear it is, the better chances you have of actually doing more concept work. Okay, clarity is key in our industry. Okay, so again, the outermost edge here, over here is where we're going to see that darkness, but it's not going to be as dark as the darker slits here. Why? Depth. Remember, we don't have a pencil, okay? So I can't just shade in atmospheric perspective and mist and, heat waves or whatever. I got a pen to my disposal. I have line weight and I have line quality, which has been a previous lesson this month also. So I encourage you to go back and look at my line weight, line quality lessons, sketching things with spheres, cones, cylinders, and cubes. Okay, it all ties together. Once we get these foundations, once we get the foundation of drawing down, and we're getting better and better at it, this isn't like pulling your chain or anything. You can draw anything in the world, anything. Okay, rockets, I don't know, people, plants, anything. Okay, the outer part, I'm pretty happy with. I don't need to do anything over there. But what I do need to do is figure out where I want to spend time putting in some actual details. And whenever we draw a creature, so we invented this from the fly. This doesn't look like anything that I can think of. There are some things on planet Earth that it kind of resembles, like strange fruit, strange bacteria, larva. Like I don't know, but that's the fun part. That's why I'm doing the lesson today. When we draw creatures, we need to have a focal point. Okay, and I have mentioned this before, where we have what's called the sea of sameness, and that is from head to toe, everything has the same exact amount of detail. It's overpowering, it punches us in the face for the wrong reasons, and we don't have a focal point. So if you're drawing along with me and you're trying to determine, okay, what is the selling point of the creature that I'm making? Is it just some random thing that can kill you? Is it, does it all look awesome? You want to put details everywhere because you want to show everything off? That's not the point. There's power in what we don't know about something, and there's even more power in looking at that particular creature and going, the focus is on the horns in the front or the teeth. That is the selling point. All right, so we need to think about the selling point, and I think, now that I'm looking at this, the selling point is actually these slits. And that was not the intention. See, guys, this is the fun part. Like, we're all on this journey together. All right, so whatever you're drawing right now, look down at it and go, if I were to put this in a movie, what would make it a character? Or if I were to put this in a game, why would it exist in the game? Am I just drawing something random? Or does this thing actually have a real function in a real environment? That's what you need to think of. So, as I'm drawing these little slits, I think what I'll do is maybe put I guess you can call it a chamfer. Those of you that don't know what a chamfer is, you see them on cars a lot, especially hard-edged cars. You see a little, instead of having something super hard on the edge, you have like a little relief, a little light catcher. It's like a little part of the material that flattens off before it goes down to a new surface. That's like layman's terms what a chamfer is. All right. Plus, chamfer is just, it's fun to say. Chamfer. All right. Once I have that, now I can start thinking of, what's going to happen in between here in the skin? Well, I actually have these secondary details of the scales. Why not just put really small little circles in here that it ties in all of these bulbous shapes together. So it's almost like there are scales in here, and that's its skin. So maybe it's kind of like the creature's glue. I don't know. think about a turtle shell, you know. Like the shells actually are attached to the turtle. You can't just take a turtle out of the shell. The ribs are attached to the shell. So maybe you can't take these smaller things off. So you notice that there's a size differential to show the realism of this thing. Look how large these shapes are in the very top. Maybe this actually opens up too in the top. That would be really creepy, but also cool at the same time. Okay, but maybe they start off large and then they get medium, and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then as they open up to bigger areas, maybe in the underbelly, they're going to get large again. So I'm just going to start putting in some circles, ellipses, ovals, whatever you want to call them. Just kind of walking them down the cracks there. I'm not going to worry about these places because, quite frankly, you can't see that. In perspective, the round shapes are going around the creature, so you won't be able to see these individual spaces in between. But again, we're implying that these areas exist on the other parts. That's why you have to have a focal point. If you have a focal point that explains the majority of the creature's like details or function, you don't need to prove to anyone that the other parts have a function. We know that. Okay? It's kind of like, I'm trying to use an analogy, well, not really an analogy, but another example. It's kind of like character concept artists, if they're just starting out and they put in figure drawing in their portfolios, don't do that. Just draw characters, because if your characters look good, the art directors are going to know that your anatomy is good. You don't need to prove that you have anatomy skills by drawing stuff from anatomy class. It's kind of like the same thing. Okay, we know what's happening around the other side. All right. There we go. And again, I'm just kind of walking some scribbles over just to see what happens. Now, again, I have to be solid with my design here. So if these flaps or little slits open, then we need maybe kind of like a membrane at the end of it or some kind of indication that the end of those lines attach to those scales somewhere. Maybe the scales are the actual skin. I'm going to put some more ink in here, just kind of round this off. You can consider this a core shadow. Okay, again, I'm going to be explaining this in my foundation series coming out soon. Core shadow is essentially if, you know, on a round object, if the light is hitting the round object, the core shadow is where the least amount of light is touching the object before it starts to bend around the other side of it. That's the easiest way to explain it. Everything has a core shadow. Your arm has a core shadow. Your lips, sticks, you know, animals, they all have it. There we go. I'm just starting to round this stuff off. Again, with a pen, I love just walking over these lines. You can see a combination of different types of lines in here. Very, very, very faint light gestural lines, some secondary darker lines like this, and some more harsh lines, maybe where the least amount of light is touching. And you can layer these with a pen, just walk them over. Again, just commit to the shape, guys. Just commit to it, and it'll be easier that way. There we go. Now that we're starting to have these cool markings in here, you could look at this sketch and go, hey, guess what? I'm done. I don't need to draw anything else. But let's put some finishing touches on this, and if you followed along with me so far drawing what I'm drawing, or maybe drawing your own version of it, congratulations. I mean, like, you're already a better designer than you were when you started out. Okay, now I'm just kind of separating some areas that were ambiguous that didn't really look like they were attached to anything. I'm just adding in some darker lines here where they may exist. So we'll see. Yeah, like under here where I kind of forgot. There we go. And also these sharp shapes, I need to figure out, okay, it looks like some of them are attached to the bulbous shapes and some of them are not. That's okay. This is more of an asymmetrical random creature, so maybe this thing didn't evolve the way we thought it should. I'm going to put some edges on here, and it could also be like these are nails, but they're not used to hurt you, they're just used to crawl. So maybe this thing does float in the air, however, when it lands on surfaces like rocks or whatever, maybe it needs it in order to crawl. So that'd be kind of cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some little details here to kind of bring out these areas. Maybe I'll put in a shape or a line that actually goes down vertically on these to really add some texture to it. That'd be kind of cool, actually. So if you have a name for this thing of what it is or what kind of species it could be, what planet it's from, I would love to hear it. I love hearing creativity in the comments. Some of you name my creatures really funny stuff. Usually the more outlandish something looks, the more simpler the name, like Joe or Nancy. It's kind of like dudes that are huge, you know, like gigantic football players and they're named Tiny. You know, that kind of stuff. There we go. All right, I'm kind of proud of myself. I didn't put any spikes on anything. No bumpy, like, no spiky alien stuff. Everything's down here. And I'm going to hold myself to that. I'm not going to add anything else. All right, so hopefully you liked today's lesson. Again, you know, rewatch it and watch my other lessons where I go over the simplicity of sketching these things. Join our Discord. Just look at the link in the description. Sign-ups for my creature design workshop are going on right now. You can find it through the Discord, and there's actual separate link through the description. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and can't wait to do my next lesson. So thanks for sticking around. Later.